I have a little bit of code here that shows some of the ways in which rendering gets controlled in a React component. And I'm going to be showing here useRef and in a moment useEffect. So I'm going to start off here with useRef. As you can see here, I have a component called counter. I use ref. Then every single time this is rendered, is going to write to the console render counter. And this is going to reference that. And if you look at the documentation, useRef is one of the ones that does not cause re-rendering when it's updated. So this would be a true call and inclusion of the re-rendering. And then I simply send back a string called counter header. Now that is being used inside of another component called login. And this simply sets a field for an email. In addition to that, then we have something called show counter, which I will talk about in a second. And now we have here the code or the tags for the login component. The very first one is, do we show that component or not? That is the counter component. And the other one is a line that shows the component based on whether this value here is true or not. It starts off as true. And that's all that's doing. Then in addition to that, I have here an input field, a couple of them, sort of representing a logging page, and then a button that we're not using. So I'm simply denoting it there to show completeness of what's usually done. And so you can see here the page. I have template, which comes from the HTML side. Then I have the toggle to include this component or not, and then a couple of fields. Now you'll see here that my first field resets that value, which updates the state, which means that it gets re-rendered. So I'm going to go ahead and type into this field, and I'll say here hello. And as you can see there, I get render 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Now, if I were to toggle this, remove the counter, you can see there, now I can type hello once again, hello, and nothing happens because that component is no longer included. Now, if I bring it back and I continue, you can see there that my counter started over again. Now, this is pretty good. What if we were to bring an additional component, and this component will simply say hello? You can see here that I'm going to set the state to hello. Then I'm going to have a useEffect. That means when that state comes into being of hello, or when this component gets loaded, this will fire. And I have an additional method inside of it to let us know when it's unloaded. Now, in addition to that, I have a ping, and let's remove that ping for now. And let's go ahead and take this over to our code, to our page. And I'm going to go ahead and add it here at the top, and then I will uncomment this line here that references that component. So I'm going to go ahead and reload the page. And as you can see there, we get the loaded, which means that the hello component was loaded, and we can see here hello world in the UI. Now, if I type into this box, I'll say here hello again, you can see there that we get the render counter, but nothing else. Now, if I were to add here console.log, and then I'll simply write ping here, save the page, reload the page, and then I'm going to go ahead and type into this box, and you can see here that ping has already taken place. The component has loaded, which is this message here. And we have no unloaded, meaning it's active. So I'm going to go ahead and say hello. And you can see this time that in addition to the render counter, we're getting ping. So I think this illustrates pretty well there that useEffect fires when that component gets loaded, which allows us to make some or take some actions that we want related to the component loading, and then we could take some additional ones if the component is unloaded. But if we wanted to simply see how often that component is touched, we can add the ping, and we can see there that it's done every time. When I use useRef, in this case, it is not just touching it, but updating the state that we can see in the console. And I think that provides some nice separation of how we could potentially use the different types of state within components.